in focus. And therefore, when it was time to allocate funding, we allocated most of the funds to respond directly to that problem, fixing of infrastructure. And therefore, social clusters, like the cluster that I'm leading, which is governance and HR, and community services, which and not to the fixing of that, would have been crucified by the community of Otogat. We did a right decision, took a right decision by allocating money there. Most of those are fixed now. What now remains is that people are now coming to the. Thank you very much. Now, niyabona ukuthi akuthina sacoma ugesi ngalela langa. So we took a correct decision collectively to allocate and prioritize funds to fix the infrastructure. We have not completed the fixing of this infrastructure. That is why there are still beaches that are closed, because the sewer that is flowing to them. Because anyway, the damage that was done by the floods far outstripped the budget that we could amass as a city. Now that is December, the roads are open, people are now in their comfort, they want to enjoy December. We are all now reminded that we needed to have fixed the pools, we needed to have done something. So in that score, we must take a collective responsibility that we allocated the mega funds that were there to where they were needed the most, and we are now living with the consequences. But in that score, again, there's an RF pool. That pool is not one of the victims of the floods. That pool has been a problem long before the floods. And we've been pouring money into that pool. And as the ANC, we are not going to sit here and take insults from people who are saying we are corrupt, we are using public funds to enrich ourselves and all of those things. Because none of the money we've poured there came to us as the ANC. And therefore, we've called in the executive committee to the city manager to find the people who are responsible for that and crucify them. Just as we are calling in terms of the other pools that were shown in the media, in that child amusement center, those small pools where our kids play. Someone took a decision to empty those pools during COVID without consulting any of us as the principals in the municipality. We don't know who. The city manager must find out, and that person must be hung out to dry, because we cannot be the Jesus of incompetent people. The ANC cannot bear to be the Jesus who's going to be crucified on behalf of officials who don't want to do their work. So we are serious about that. Coming to the issue that Speaker or Honorable Whip was raising, I think we must remind ourselves that we are not an executive mayoral system. We don't have a mayor. When the mayor does his work, he presides over a multi-party executive committee. And therefore, we all have a duty and responsibility for the governance and running of the city. And all those parties who are represented in the executive committee have a role to play and a duty to take responsibility for the decisions that are made in the council, in that executive committee, and take responsibility for the oversight as well, because it's part of their responsibility. Otherwise, why else do we have representation in the executive? And therefore, when things go wrong, all of us as parties represented at the executive committee must take some level of responsibility. I know that the ANC has the majority in the executive committee, just as the ANC has some majority in this council. But we don't have an outright majority. We consult and we work on the issue of the mandates given by other parties as well. Now, I'm saying so that as executive committee members, we must take responsibility and don't hang the mayor out to dry. So that no one must call for the mayor to resign if things fall apart. Rather call for the executive committee to resign when things fall apart, because we are a collective in that executive committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, councillors, to all of you. We have made your submissions. Thank you very much. Let me take this opportunity to report to council the outcome of my consultation with the Weaver parties. We had a long discussion with parties, and there was an agreement that continuing with the council meeting today is in conflict with Rule 10, in the Rules of Order, subsection 3. All submissions made by whip of parties, I therefore took a decision that the rule as was correctly read is correct. It does not need further explanation. I'm also on record admitting and confirming that as a speaker, I understand and I agree with the rule and the expression made by those councillors. The whip of parties as well raised a concern and requested me to convey this to council, particularly to the executive and to the mayor, that in future, the executive committee should not sit on the day of council, because we find ourselves in this situation because the executive committee had to meet in the morning before council, and we've been told that they could not make time. It ended up affecting time of council. While there were important items in the agenda of the executive this morning that had to be discussed, processed, submitted to council for consideration. But doing that, being lenient, being accommodative, made us to be in conflict with the rule. Because of that submission from the Weaver parties, I've then agreed that today's meeting will be adjourned. It will be convened in the next few days. In terms of the rules, I should convene the meeting in the next 7 days, but I intend to convene the meeting on Tuesday next week, depending on the logistics of finding the venue and other logistics that couples with the preparation of council. Therefore, councillors, today's council meeting has been adjourned because of the reasons mentioned above. I will request that before you leave, we have arranged a lunch in the hall so that you don't have any wasteful expenditure. You must eat the food that you have ordered before you leave. Thank you very much, councillors. The meeting is adjourned. Councillors, please, in the next meeting, bring your own agendas. Ngeke siwathumele amanye ama-agenda esibili lawo enihamba nawo nizobuya nasem agenda kwi-council next week. Thank you.